stopped speaking, not because he had nothing to say, but because no one listened. At first, he didn't notice it happening. When he shared what he felt, the moment passed too quickly. When he tried to explain himself, someone else filled the space. His words weren't rejected, they were simply skipped. So he adjusted. He spoke less. He waited longer. He chose silence over interruption. And slowly, he learned something painful. Being ignored hurt less than trying and feeling invisible. Inside his shell, that lesson felt like safety. Over time, people began to describe him in a certain way. They said he was easy to be around, easy to manage, easy to forget. He never complained, never interrupted, never asked for more than what was offered. And that made others comfortable. They praised his calm. They admired his patience. They smiled and said how peaceful he was. No one noticed the cost. Each compliment asked him to stay smaller, to stay quiet, to remain inside the shell that had once protected him. Being easy felt like approval, but it came with a quiet condition. Don't need too much. Don't speak too loudly. Don't take up space. And so he learned to disappear without ever leaving. Little by little, he became good at not being noticed. He arrived without sound and left without farewell. He learned where to stand so he wouldn't be in the way. When decisions were made, he listened. When opinions were shared, he nodded. Not because he agreed, but because it was easier than explaining himself. People grew used to his presence the way they grow used to furniture, always there, rarely acknowledged. And over time, even he began to forget what his voice sounded like when it wasn't careful. He was present, but unseen, and the quiet that once felt like protection began to feel like absence. There came moments when he wanted to speak, not to argue, not to demand, just to say, "This doesn't feel right." But the words no longer came easily. They gathered inside his chest, pressed against the shell, and stayed there. His throat tightened. His body froze. Silence had become automatic. It answered before he could decide. It stepped forward before his voice had a chance. What once felt like safety now felt like confinement. The shell that protected him also kept everything else out. Connection, understanding, relief. And in the stillness, he realized something unsettling. He wasn't being silenced anymore. He was silencing himself. One day, in the stillness he had learned so well, something shifted. He noticed that no one was asking him to stay quiet anymore. No one was pushing him back into his shell. They simply didn't know he was there. The silence wasn't humility, it wasn't peace, it wasn't patience. It was absence. He had faded so carefully that the world no longer reacted to him at all. And in that realization, there was no anger, only clarity. Silence had protected him once, but now it was costing him connection. He didn't break the silence with a sudden declaration. He didn't step out of his shell all at once. He started smaller, by answering when someone asked, by staying present a second longer, by letting his head emerge even when it trembled. He learned that a voice doesn't need to be loud to be real, and that being seen often begins with allowing yourself to exist. Silence doesn't mean peace. Sometimes it's just the place you learned to hide when no one was listening. And if you've lived there long enough, your voice doesn't disappear. It waits, quietly. For the moment you decide that being unseen hurts more than being heard. If this story felt familiar, you don't need to explain yourself. Just leave a word in the comments that describes how silence shows up in your life. This space is for listening.